While there is conditional formatting gradients in Google Sheets with color scale, and indeed there are methods to deploy color scale with Google Apps Script, there is no way to move this color scale gradient and offset it to other regions in your adjacent columns. In this tutorial, we are going to do just that with 3 examples. In our first example, we are going to grab an existing list and then use that existing list to look at these values in column D and then put in color gradient offsets in column C instead of column D. Then in our next example, we are going to just provide 2 color values instead of looking at a range of color values, and then generate a gradient of a number of steps and do the same thing by placing them in column C. In our final example, we are going to run conditional formatting all the way across each row based on values in column I, and noting that column I will not be exact, so we'll have to do a little bit of conditional formatting magic to handle ranges that are equal to or slightly less than the current value. All right, let's just clear all this out first. Okay, if you're playing along, and I encourage that you do, you can grab a copy of the starter sheet here in the link in the description below. Once you have the starter sheet, go ahead and jump into Extensions, App Scripts, and open up the App Script IDE. Go ahead and do that now, and then we'll get cracking. Okay, here we are. So let's explore what we have in the App Script file at present, and then we'll dive into our first example. Here we'll have a test function that will feed into our run function here, and we'll do that for each of our 3 examples. In the green, you can see our JS doc information explaining what's happening and the parameters that will be required to run each of these examples. Of course, if you ever get stuck or you need reference information, there will be a link to the tutorial for you to ever go back and reference at any time. Cool. All right, let's dive in. So what do we want to do? So let's head over to our data sheet here. So what are we trying to achieve here? We want to grab the background color for each one of these values. And then as these values are found here, and we're just using a basic ran between Google Sheets function here that will change every time we deploy, just for a bit of fun. But every time one of these values here, we want the background color in column C that corresponds with this value to be the same color as we find here. So let's head down to the first example in the IDE, and we'll tab in. We're going to need the spreadsheet that we're in, so we'll say const ss equals spreadsheet app get, and use get active, but I like to be a bit more explicit and say get active spreadsheet. And then we'll say const, and we need the sheet that we're going to be into, which will be sheet 1 here. So we can say const sheet equals ss.get sheet by name. And that's going to be our sheet 1. So let's put in some double quotation marks, head over to our sheet here. It's always handy just to double click the sheet tab and hit Control C to copy and paste it over. That way there's no mistakes. Okay, and now we need the destination range. So we'll say const dest range, and that's going to be equal to sheet dot get range. So now that we have the sheet 1, we want to get the range that we want to update. And what is the range that we're going to update? So here there's a couple of approaches that we can use to get the range, but we're just going to use the A1 notation here. And what do we want to update? We want to update from C2 here all the way down to C29. So we can make this run all the way down to the bottom if we wish to. So we could just say C2 colon C29. Now, if you have 0 in this range here, you're going to get some weirdness going on because 0 is equal to an empty cell. But for us, we're just using 1 to 20, so it's not going to cause any issues. Oh, and we did constant instead of const, which it's because we're a little bit silly. And now we need our color range. So go ahead of me now and add in the color range. And our color range is going to be sheet.get range. And what's our color range? Well, that's going to be A2 all the way down to A21. So So A21. Cool. So now that we've got all our variables set up, we need to call our function that we're going to be generating, which will be up here. So let's say conditional formatting color scale offset version 1. We can see that it takes 3 parameters here. So the sheet, the destination sheet, range, and the color range as well. Cool. So let's go sheet, comma, dest, range, and color range. Nice. Awesome. So now that we've made this call to this function here, let's generate this main function. Now I've separated this into a test area into the main area because it makes it a bit more reusable if we have different scenarios that we want to use this in our sheet. And what are we going to do here? Let's create some variables from the information that we got. So the first one is going to be, we need to get those background ranges of those colors, right? We could say const colors. And then we could say color range. And what do we want to do there? We want to get the background. Now there's 2 ones here. There's this get background. So it's going to get the first cell value in the range. But if we put an S at the end, it's going to get every one of these in an array. I could show you how that looks first. Let's just say console.log colors. And let's just test see if that all runs smoothly first. So let's make our choice here, and we want this test conditional formatting color scale offset, and run and go through permissions authorization. Cool. So you can see with our results now that has grabbed the background color for each cell in that range here as a 2D array for the inner array for each column item, and then the outer array for each row. Excellent. And now we just need those values as well, don't we? So we can say const vals for values, or vals, and then color range dot get values. Again, make sure you got the one with the S. Do you want to see how that looks? Go on. Let's have a look. Let's have a cheeky look. Vals. All right, hit save. Hit runsies. All right, so the first console log will be the colors, and the second console log is the numbers for the corresponding colors. Awesome. Okay, so now we need to create a bunch of rules for our conditional formatting. So each one of those numbers is going to be a conditional formatting rule equal to these numbers, but it'll be offset into column C. So how are we going to do that? So we are first going to create a constant called rules. So const rules. And that's going to be equal to colors.map. And map is a functional programming iterator that allows us to return an array equal to the existing array, but modify it in some manner. And how we're going to modify it, we are going to create a spreadsheet app rule. So with our map, we need both the color this time. So we'll say color, so whatever the value is on each iteration will be color, and then also the index. Okay, so let's make a arrow function here, curly braces, enter. First thing we also need in here is the number, so let's extract that. We'll say const, and we can say num is equal to vals, which contains our list of numbers, and we'll just use the index to find that value. So IDX. Nice. Now remember our values, if we go to our execution log, on each iteration will be inside another array. So we need to get the 0th value in that array. Let me just describe that. So if we went color, we'll say console log again, .log. What we need is color 0, the 0th item in the color. And we'll hit save here. And we need to return something. So let's just return, we'll just return num for the time being. I'll give it a test. Okay, so you can see our 2D array, but on each iteration, we want to get inside it for that 0th value here for that console log. Where is it? Here. And that's returning all those hexadecimal color values. All right, glad we got that squared away. Get rid of num here because we won't be returning that. So now we need to generate a rule. let's create a rule, const rule, and that's going to be equal to, and here we get the spreadsheet app, and there is a builder for rules called new conditional formatting rule, and we can chain a bunch of stuff to it to build this rule. So here we're going to say when a formula is satisfied here. Okay, so what's going on here? Why can't we just say if it's equal to 2? Well, we need an offset value here. So let me just describe it in conditional formatting over here. So if I said conditional formatting, we'll say custom formula is, and then we say if, we'd have to put the range being C2, for example, to, let's do all of them. Yeah. C2 to D29, for example. And then always with your conditional formatting rules, the example formula is going to be the one at the top. So if we say if D2 is equal to, say, 2, for example, then any value with a 2 in D2 will then highlight this value here. So that's what we want out of this. So we're going to use this formula in our script here. So we may as well keep that up for the time being. And we will say in template literal, so backticks, we'll say equals D2 is equal to, and then we want these numbers in here, right? So we can use our $ curly braces to insert that variable with num. And then our next task in this builder is to set the background color. So we're going to say set background. And set background in this example can take a hexadecimal color, as you can see here. So what we'll do now is insert that color with rule. With color. Nice. So on each iteration, that color will change, and so will that number. So next we need to set ranges. And set ranges requires an array of ranges. And for us, we only have one range, so we need to put that in an array. And that's going to be our dest range. And the last thing we need to do is just to build this conditional formatting rule. Nice. Okay, so now we just return the rule inside the map. And that will generate an array of conditional formatting rules. And the last thing we need to do is just go sheet for the target sheet, which is sheet 1. So let's just cancel that and close that so we can see what's going to happen. And then we'll say set conditional formatting rules. And what do we need to set? Well, the rules. Now, keep in mind that every time you set conditional formatting rules on a sheet tab like this, it will wipe out all the rules that were existing there. Now, if you want to learn how to maintain the existing rules, in addition to new rules that you add in, I have a tutorial on that you can find in the link in the description below or in the pop-up just above. Let's hit save and let's just make sure we haven't made any mistakes. No, I think we're okay. Let's hit run. Bonza. So as you can see here, we have our list of conditional formatting rules. And let's just compare across here. So we've got 1, it's going to be virtually a whitish color. This 20 is going to be the darkest color here, and you can see the ranges are working well. Okay, we nailed it. Now, keep in mind that this won't be that gradient conditional formatting. If we actually look at the conditional formatting in here, you can see that each rule is a conditional formatting rule. Okay, let's have a look at our next example. So sometimes we don't want to just rely on a sheet tab to create our gradient range. Perhaps we want to generate our gradient range programmatically and then apply that to what we have here. So let's head down to our example 2 now. So we can copy a couple of things across so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's copy from the spreadsheet all the way through to the destination range. We don't have a color range this time, so I'm going to hit Control C to copy and put that down into your test conditional formatting color scale offset V2. Nice, and let's just open that right up this time. So C2 to C, just in case we need to add more values here. All right, so what else do we need here to generate this? So we need a color start, which is going to be This time around, we'll make it an RGB value, although it could be a hexadecimal value as well. But we're just going to try out an RGB value this time. And we'll need a color start, so a starting color and a stop color. Also, we'll need a number of steps to iterate by. So here we know the values are going to be from 1 to 20, so we'll need that many steps. So let's just plug those in. So we'll say const color start is equal to, and it's going to be an array of RGB values, so red, green, and blue values. Let's make the first one white. So 255, 255, and 255. Now, if you're looking for a bunch of RGB values, you can always just go in here, have a look at a field color, and look at customs. So you could add a custom color here, and you can see the RGB values or hexadecimal colors there, and just copy those values in. For me, I think I'm going to go from white for 1, and 20 is going to be a dark orange. So we'll say const color stop, and that's going to be equal to, so square brackets for an array, and we'll have 230, 239, 230, comma, 145, comma, 56. Nice. And how many steps? Well, we have 20 steps that we want to go through here, and that would match our data. So we could say const step is equal to 20. Nice. That's a pretty good start. So now all our ones should be white still, but we should gradate through the orange spectrum all the way up to a darker orange at a step of 20. Good. All right. So now let's call this conditional formatting color scale offset v2. So conditional formatting color scale offset v2. Plug in our variables. First one is going to be the sheet. The next one is going to be the destination range for us. So dest range. Next one, actually let's put this on multiple lines for clarity here. Look at that. Looking prettier already. Sheet, destination range. What else have we got? Color start. So color start. And color stop. And oh, need a comma. Did I put a comma in the last one? You said it. Good boy. And then step. Cool. Save that for now. Head up to our actual run function. And now we need to generate the colors. So we need to go const again, color. But instead of getting the colors from a sheet, we need to get it from somewhere else. And what we're going to use is a little class that I've made for myself that generates gradients and helps you translate hexadecimal into RGB and RGB back into hexadecimal. And that's on my site. So you can scroll all the way down to the bottom of the tutorial and just click on this link here. And that will get you to Colorly. Feel free to pause now and read through all the tutorial, or you can just grab the script up the top here by going up here and hitting copy. And then we're going to just plug this in just underneath this here. All right, so now we've got this little class or pseudo class that allows us to access this generate color gradient. All right, so let's go up now here, and then we'll say colorly now. And this is a function, so braces, brackets, dot generate color gradient. Now this takes either a string of hexadecimal or an array of numbers. We've got our RGB ones, so we're going to plug those in. So that would be our color start, and then it's going to need a color end, so color end, and then it also asks for steps, and we'll hit save. Color end, so color stop. Let's change that to color end. There. That's going to be better. Okay. At this point in time, we may as well do a little test with our console log. There we go, color, and see what it generates if there's no issues. So change this over to test conditional formatting color scale offset version 2. Hit run. And there we go. So this is now our from white all the way through to orange, and there will be 20 of these values because of our steps. Sweet. Okie dokie, we're doing good, team. So now we go back to generating our rules now that we have all our information in place. So our process is very similar to the one before. So what we can actually do is mosey up here And we will just copy this, Control C to copy. And we'll head in here and we'll hit Control V to paste. Now there's a couple of things we need to change here. So color and index, we will need the index this time, but instead of vowels, because we didn't bring in our vowels this time, we don't know, but we know intuitively that they're going to start at 1 and end in 20, because we're going to iterate through our list of colors, which will be 20 colors. And I've noticed I've got color here instead of colors. Change that to S, change that to S. Okay, crisis averted. And then next one, we've got index, and index is going to start at 0, but we want it to start at 1. So we could say IDX, ODX, good job, Scott. IDX plus 1. And then we've got rules. So our rule now is going to be pretty much the same. So D2 is equal to the number. Then we set our background color, which is going to be from this map. So colors.map, and then we've set color. So on each iteration, we're going to plug color in here. Our destination range is then changed just to range here in this example. And then we build, and then we're good to go. Now keep in mind in this example here, and indeed in this example here, we are plugging in some raw values, so sort of magic numbers, and that's kind of frowned upon. But it's a good starting point for us to understand what we're doing here. To be fair, if this is just a place that you're regularly updating a location, keep it. If not, modify it. In our third example, I'll show you how to modify this anyway. One thing we didn't talk about was setting our background colors. Now, before we set hexadecimal colors, and we can just use this basic set background. However, we need to convert these to hexadecimal to set backgrounds. There is another way to set backgrounds using RGB colors, but this may be easier for you, perhaps a little bit more performant. So we can go back to using Colorly again, and we'll say Colorly dot, and then we can say RGB to hex. And what do we want to change? We want to change our color. So the color is in an array, so we need to spread that out into these 3 arguments here, or these 3 parameters, and we can use the spread operator here. So 3 dots, and then just say color. Hit save. All right, let's go ahead and run and see if everything's working smoothly. There we go. Okay, so you can see our conditional formatting rules have been generated here, and here they are appearing here in our white through to orange. Nice. Okay, last example. This is going to be fun. So this time around, we've upped the level somewhat. So strap in, peoples. Here, gotta get everything fitting in just nicely. Yeah, that'll do. Here we have game dev companies in Thailand, and we've got an arbitrary price. Perhaps that's their value per $1 million, because they're performing incredibly well. And then we want to highlight the entire row based on these values. Now, unlike before where we had a step of 20 here and they matched exactly, we need to make some minor changes to our approach to our formula for generating these values. Otherwise, they won't appear at all. Let's have a look how we might do that just with our standard conditional formatting. So we know what to do in our code. So let's just select this range here, select this range here. Oh, actually, let's go down to here just so you can see an example of what happens with white space. And then we'll right click, go to conditional formatting. And now we want to go to custom formula is, and let's just say in this example, we want to say if I2 is our starting point. And then we want to say if I2 is less than or equal to 1 in this example. So there's no value here less than or equal to 1. Well, let's maybe make it 2. And we've got a couple values popping up here. So we can see this range has popped up here, but also there's been a bunch of blank locations that have popped up with this conditional formatting, and we don't want that. So what we need to do is lock in the target column here. So if this target column appears with this value, this 1, there's no value with 2 now. Let's make it somewhere in the middle. We'll say 4 this time. So any value that's less than or equal to 4 is appearing here. Then it's going to get this color, right? And now, because we've locked in this column value for our formula, then the conditional formatting will generate all the way across our entire range from I through to L. All right, so we've got that figured out. Let's just change that to say, I don't know, 1 here, and we'll do a couple of rules. We'll add another rule, make this one 2, we'll change the color a bit to, I don't know, blue. Add another rule, say 3 this time, change the color to this, whatever that is. Add another rule, change the color to 4. You can see why doing this programmatically now is kind of handy, right? Make this yellow. And then we've got a bunch of conditional formatting rules. So let's just go done. And you can see there's an order of priority here as well. So this one overwrites any of these values. So if I were to change this one, so any value less than 1, and I'll whack this bad boy up here, you can see it's been wiped out by the priority of this blue value here. And if I move that back and I did the same for, I don't know, blue, move that up here, you can see that this pinky color one has overridden things. So order of priority is important. Now, we still haven't addressed this bottom issue here, where the value is less than or equal to 1. It's also including empty spaces. Now, you may want that, you may not want that. So to resolve that, we can just add in another conditional formatting rule and just say, if it's empty, do nothing. And we'll hit done, and you can see it doesn't have any impact at the moment, but if we whack it up here, you can now see that it does. Any value that's empty is not included in the conditional formatting. So now that we have the sort of basic structure of what we need mapped out in our minds, let's go over and do it programmatically. Clear that out and get ready. Okay, so let's start off with our test function. And we may as well copy everything in here and just make some adjustments. And head down to Test, Conditional Formatting, Color Scale Offset version 3, and hit Control V to paste. And we're still on sheet 1. However, our range has certainly changed. So now we're on I2. So our starting place is I2. And that's going to go all the way down to L here. So as we add in more game dev companies, the conditional formatting will follow through. Now, as we learnt with Colorly, it doesn't matter if we've got an RGB color or hexadecimal color here. So let's have a little experiment and change our color start to a hexadecimal color. And here we will put in a string hashtag 98FB98. And that is apparently mint green. And then our end color is going to be hashtag 008080. And that, boys and girls, and all those in between, is going to be a delightful teal. Now, our step is still going to be 20, but because we're doing less than or equal to, we're going to capture these decimal places as well. So that's going to be Funky Col Medina. And we know our values only go up to 20. We could extend that up to larger values, to 1,000 even. But just keep in mind that with our steps and the color gradient values, there's going to be a limit on those gradients, right? So there's only a certain amount of hexadecimal numbers between two color values. Okay, so what have we got here? So we have got a sheet, check. Range. So destination range, yep, that's still good, check. We've got a color start and a color end, and then we've also got a stop. We've also got a new parameter that we're going to put in here, which is going to be a Boolean. And that's whether or not we want to include anything with a 0 in it. Like I said, sometimes you might want conditional formatting anything less than 1 to also include in empty spaces. Sometimes you might not. So for us, we'll initially say, question is ignore empty, and if it's ignore empty, we want to set that to true. Okay, so if true, empty cells will be ignored. All right, so I think we've got our conditions ready, and that's all set up to run the function. Time to make the magic. All right, not a lot has changed now, so let's go ahead and make a copy of all this. Hit Control C. And mostly down here, and Control V. Now this time our color start and end will be hexadecimal values, but Colorly says that it doesn't matter. If it's a hex or a gradient, it will figure it out. But here we want to make some changes. Okay, so instead of just D2 equaling, we want it to be less than or equal to. And then we want to put in a custom value here. So a custom sample range, so wherever our sample is coming from. So in most cases, it's going to be the first value. So I don't see much of a reason why I can't just go sample range. Now you may have to refactor this if you've got your sample somewhere else. I think more often than not, it's going to be the first value. Let's just tidy this up a bit too. It's not, there we go. Okay, so let's go const sample range, and that's going to be the first column in our range, and we can grab that by going range, which is this one here, dot get A1 notation, dot split. So we're going to split the A1 notation. So remember, A1 notation is going to look like this, and we're going to split between this colon here to get the first value. So split, what are we splitting by? Well, that colon, and then it's going to create two arrays, and we want the first one or the 0th one in that array. So that's going to just show us this value here, this I2. So we're going to put that, so we'll say I2, and there it is. Now, remember, we had to put a $ in front of the column to make sure it's all locked in. And because we're using backtick string or template literals, we need to escape the $. So \$. Cool. I think that's pretty good there. Now, if you need more flexibility with this, where the sample range is, you can create your own little method here or function to change that. But I want to keep this tutorial a little bit simple so you can work the main bulk of the information out. All right, so that's good. Let's just tab in that return so it's nice and neat. And our range stays the same. It's going to return a RGB to hex, so that's fine. That stays the same. That's been updated, range stays the same, that's good. Now, remember we had the condition, now we have ignore rules, so we need to handle for that before we return the rule. So underneath here, we could say if ignore rules. So if ignore rules is true, we need to create another rule. So we'll say const rule, and that rule is equal to spreadsheet 8, new conditional formatting rule. Okay, so look, we've got this template up here. So I'm going to continue with when formula is satisfied. So you could say cell doesn't equal either, but I'm happy with this approach. And here we'll say if the, so backticks, if the, so backslash to escape, $, and then $, again, curly braces, sample range. So if the sample range is equal to an empty cell, then we're not going to do anything. So all we need to do is then say set ranges, I should say, and then build. So we may as well just copy this and paste it in. Okay, cool. And then inside this if statement, once we've built that rule, we need to add it to the start, because remember it needs to go at the start, otherwise it'll be ignored. So we can say rules dot unshift this time. So unshift is the opposite of push, where you append something to the end. Here we're going to add it to the start. So unshift rule. And then that's done. And then same again, sheet, this is okay. I think we're good. We haven't made anything silly. We should be good to run. All right, let's hit run. Nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? It's because we copied in V2 instead of V3. Let's hit save. And let's go ahead and select test conditional formatting, color scale offset V3, and hit run. There we go. Nice, so let's make sure we're not fools and everything is working correctly. So we should have a lighter mint green here for our 1s and 2s, and they should darken here. 5, yeah, 4's a little bit darker than 1. 6, 7's getting darker still, 8 darker still. Then we hit 10s, 14's still darker than 10. Then 18s and 19 is super dark. We are rock and roll. Success. Well done, team. Okay, so that's how we can apply a conditional formatting gradient in 3 approaches in Google Sheets using Google Apps Scripts. I'd love to hear how you would apply this in your own project. It's always fascinating and provides inspiration for other developers. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.